All right, hello, rockers and rollers. It's the Meista from Brews and Tunes. Cheers. Absolutely thrilled today. I am chatting with a legend in the music industry, the one and only Mr. Richard T. Bear, aka T. Bear. How are you doing, sir?
I am doing great and better for having met you.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice of you. Yeah, this is a great day. Talking to a musical legend, drinking a frosty brew. Can't get better than that. And first off, first and foremost, I have to congratulate you on the brand new album, the Way of the World that just came out, I think on what, March 22nd-ish, so about a month ago.
Yeah.
Um, Phenomenal album. What a
Oh, thank you.
great album. Yeah, I've been digging it. I since I got my hands on it, I was telling you earlier, I've been listening to it daily pretty much. And I've always loved, kind of that that 60s, 70s kind of R&B, that rhythm and blues, in the vein of, the greats of that era. And it definitely captures that, but then it has a nice modern flair to it too. So
It's definitely, yeah, it's definitely retro sound with a modern flair. Yeah.
yeah,
It's which
very
is
cool.
what yeah, that's what we tried to accomplish, I
Yeah,
guess.
I really love it. I think, anybody that likes rhythm and blues, but there's so much more going on. It's not just a rhythm and blues album. I mean that's the core, but I mean, rock and roll, it's a rock and roll album. And you touch on all these other really cool aspects of music. Americana is in there, jazz. I mean, the list goes. I mean, there's even kind of some Latin sounds and a lot of really interesting things. So I guess I should actually ask you a question about that. And I guess that's the big question for me is like there's so much influence and so intricacies and this rich tapestry of music. Like, what kind of inspires you to pull all of this in? I mean, do you listen to it sounds like you listen to a lot of different styles of music.
No, I listen to everything, soup to nuts, A to Z. I mean, I am, I will listen from anything from world music, uh mento, calypso, reggae, uh, Brahms, Beethoven, Mozart, um, African, I mean, Mexican, Hawaiian, Polynesian.
Wow.
I haven't gotten around to penguin music yet, but hopefully I'll tap into some of that soon.
Nice, nice. Yeah, it's just there's just so much going on with the album, but at the same time, um it's a very friendly album for the listener. I think it's just a beautiful album. It's just so fun to listen to, and it's one
Thank
of
you.
those albums that, for me, like that last track comes on, um, and depending on which version you have, because I know there's the True Romance or the Red Harvest bonus track. Um, uh, like I just immediately, all right, flip it back over. Let's start over again. Um, or go back to the album prior, or any of your other prior albums as well. Yeah, just such really cool, rich music. So tell me a little bit about the band that you put together for this album and kind of the recording process.
Yeah, well, I've been playing for years, for the last few years since I got jumped back into it with Tony Bronigal.
Hmm.
And Tony's a drummer from Texas, and he's a phenomenal drummer. Um, his credits include Bonnie Raitt's Nick of Time album,
Yeah.
Robert Cray, Little Feat, Ricky Lee Jones, Taj Mahal. Um, he has a band that he plays with a lot, a blues band called the Phantom Band,
Okay.
that the late Mike Finnegan was in. Um, and I kind of grabbed him and I said, I want to get back into playing music again, and I want to make a record. And he said, yeah, let's do it. And I was given the opportunity to use Robby Krieger's studio by Robby Krieger being the guitar player for the Doors.
Oh yeah.
I was over there doing a session. I'm a session player as well. I made played on a lot of records, and Robby came through the studio while I was playing on somebody's album, and he said, "Hey man, when are you going to make a record again? When are you going to do this again?" And I said, "I don't know, Robby. I've taken a hiatus to raise a family, but now, the family's raised. I ended up getting divorced. I met a new girl. She wants me to play music a lot, and she's kind of behind shoving me back into this thing.
Nice.
And I don't know. I don't have deep pockets, so I can't afford, to come in your studio. It's a phenomenal studio, but I'm sure that that the price for making a record here would be astronomical. I'm not signed to anybody, And he said to me, "Are you kidding me? Tell you what, you come in here, you make your record here. I'll give you the studio anytime you want it. You just pay the engineer."
Wow.
So for the next couple of years, when the studio wasn't in use and I had a song, I'd go in there and record. And we came out with my comeback album, which is called
Oh yeah, Fresh Bear Tracks.
Fresh Bear Tracks. Because
Great album.
Yeah. And then I called all my friends and I said, "Tony, let's get all my buddies in here and some of your buddies." And so we called upon Stephen Stills, Edgar Winter, Mike Finnegan, Bent Montench from the Heartbreakers from Tom Petty's band, the E Street Horns, some of the guys from Steely Dan that play with Steely Dan, and
Wow.
on and on and on. Tom Scott, some of the people that played in the Wrecking Crew that were in their 80s played on this record.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's really cool.
Chuck Berghofer played the upright bass on "Woe Is Me" on that track. And, he came in, he's 86 years old. He walks in with his upright bass. He was the guy that did "Those Boots Are Made for Walking," doom, 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 and he
so
played,
cool.
Everybody showed up and it was great. And Stephen Stills was amazing. Walter Trout played on it. Lawrence Juber from Wings, Denny Sywell from Wings.
Wow.
It was really a great time that over the 2 years that I recorded it. And in fact, the song that Stephen Stills and I wrote called "Give It Up" went to #1 in Europe during COVID. I couldn't get over there. So, I did the record. I finished it. I actually got signed by a label out of the blue. There were 2 labels that wanted to sign me that heard about this record that was being made. So I ended up going with one called Quarto Valley Records.
Yeah.
And because they, love old people like me, and they have on their roster Paul Rogers, Edgar Winter. They had Kim Simmons, Savoy Brown. They had people like that, and I went, cool place to be. I landed in a cool place.
Yeah, great record.
And the album was almost finished, and unfortunately, my wife that nagged me to do this record constantly was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer.
Oh God.
Terminal, and given maybe 6 months to live. And so I took that year off, that 6 months to a year, to take care of her and get her treatments. And finally, towards the end of her life, she wrote me a note. She said, "Finish the record, go out on tour, live your best life, have all the fun you can possibly have, and fall in love again." And so I dedicated Fresh Bear Tracks to Nina. That was my wife. And the last song on the album is called Nina's Song.
Yeah.
And it's very hard. It's a heartbreaking song, but they play it on Paris radio all the time.
Nice.
They love sentimental things,
Yeah.
The French,
Yeah.
And I was over touring with Walter Trout. I've been playing keyboards in his band for the better part of a year now, and I was over there, and to hear it on Paris radio and hear it all over Europe it's really a testament to her.
Yeah, that's a
And,
that's a wonderful tribute to her too. Yeah, like I didn't realize that I didn't know that. I mean, and please accept my condolences.
thank you.
Yeah, that's gonna be hard. That's gonna be a hard song to listen to from now on for me. Wow.
Well,
Yeah, it's
I
such a beautiful song. I didn't realize I didn't know she had passed away. I'm so sorry.
and so I honor her by continuing music in my life. And so Fresh Bear Tracks came out during COVID, and of course we couldn't go out and tour. We couldn't do this, we couldn't do that. Everybody was stuck inside. So what I decided to do was start to write short stories. And over the last 4 or 5 years in writing songs, I always start with the lyrics now.
Oh,
I'll write a short story, and from the short story I'll write a poem. From the poem I'll write lyrics,
oh, that's
and
cool.
then I'll put them to music. And the new album, the record company wanted me to make another one. They were so happy with the people reviewed it, and it was getting like 4 and 5 stars and 9 out of 10 in England on Maximum Volume Music, and they never gave it 10, but they gave it a 9. They've never given a 10 to anybody. So they said, we want to make another record, and I said, okay. So I got Tony Bronigal back together, and this time with Lawrence Juber to co-produce and help me arrange. And we did it at Lawrence's house, and it was just Lawrence, me, Tony, and we'd get a bass player, Ricky Cortez, or we got Hutch Hutcherson from Bonnie Raitt's band. And then, we'd get Lenny Castor from Toto to do the percussion. But here's the thing. We weren't in a studio per se. We were at Lawrence's house, and I'd go over there with a keyboard and sing and play a song that I wrote on a click track.
Oh, wow.
And then the stems, in Pro Tools would be sent to whoever else we wanted to play on it. So you'd go to Tony Bronigal's house, he played drums on it. Then we'd send it out on the road to Hutch Hutchinson, and he'd sit in his hotel room, on a Bonnie Raitt tour, and he'd play bass on it, and wow. It went around over to the percussionists, over to this one, and that's the way we did it. The only time we were in the studios when I wanted to record the song Breathe and Jewel on a real grand piano. So we went over to J.J. Blair's house studio, because he had a grand piano there. And we did it there, and he mixed it. And that's this one.
Wow.
The Way of the World. And it's really an interesting record, because I'm so glad you like the songs and like the record.
Oh, it's great.
Because it's got this retro sound to it. It's got this flow to it, and it's authentic, and it's genuine. And yeah. You see, the thing is, I don't, as a keyboard player, I loved certain keyboard players in my life that I've met, that I want to honor. And they're no longer here, but they taught me so much. For example, Leon Russell, I've always admired my whole life.
Yeah, great.
Nicky Hopkins.
Oh, man.
Dr. John, Mac Rabenak. So, if I can play like T-Bear, but embellish some of those figures and those chords and those changes and the feel, it really works really well on things that you're doing. And The Way of the World is really an homage to all those people and all those things that I've really enjoyed. The Way of the World, the title track, is an homage to Bob Dylan, because I love him as a writer. I mean, he's my guy,
Yeah.
And what would, and every time I wrote a song, I would be like, what would what would Dylan say in a time like this, the way of the world? And those are why those lines are like that. Um, Before the Fall is an homage to Brian Wilson,
Oh, cool.
and Mozart and Amy Winehouse.
Oh, that's an interesting
Little her
trio.
thrown in,
Yeah.
little her thrown in there. That Before the Fall. Uh, Jewel is a song not about the singer Jewel. It's about a date I once went on with somebody called Julie.
Okay.
And Julie worked for Lou Adler. And Lou Adler in LA is the guy behind A&M Records. He's also the guy that produced Carole King's Tapestry.
Hmm.
He produced The Mamas and the Papas, California Dream and all that. He produced all the Cheech and Chong movies, Up in Smoke, everything.
Oh, that's right. I forget. Yeah. That.
He produced so many great things. And a lot of people know him as a guy that sits next to Jack Nicholson at the Laker games in the front row.
Yeah.
He sits there with his white, cap. And so I said to Julie, I said, how long have you been working for Lou? And she said, oh, 40 years.
Wow.
I've been since I was a teenager. And I said, well, that's amazing. And I said, Julie, you got any nicknames? This is out on a date, And she said, yeah, my nickname now is Jewel.
Hmm.
And I said, really? How'd you get that? She says, well, Lou wasn't going to use some Laker tickets one week, so he had me drive over to Jack Nicholson's house, which is all the way across LA during like rush hour. It took me hours to get there, and I finally got there, and I gave the tickets to Jack so he could use them, use Lou's seat for somebody he wanted to bring to the game. And he said, Julie, you went above and beyond. So from now on, I'm going to call you Jewel. You're a jewel to me.
Wow.
And so I said, oh, that's a pretty cool way to get a name,
Yeah.
And I said, you know what I'm going to do, Julie? I'm going to write you a song.
Nice.
And she said, really? I said, yeah, I'm going to write you a song. And I thought I was, kind of going to impress her, right? And she looked at me, Victor, and I swear she said this. She looked at me, she goes, you wouldn't be the first.
Wow. I like her.
Right. She threw down. She really threw down on me.
Nice.
And I said, and I'm trying to be, coy and cool. And I said, oh yeah, who wrote your song? She said, J.D. Souther, the guy that writes with the Eagles.
Oh, wow.
Written all the like Eagles songs and
Yeah.
writes with Jackson Brown and all those kind of people. And oh my God, Jimmy Buffett, he writes with, anyway, I said, wow, okay. So I listened to J.D. Souther's record that she told me that he wrote for her. And I thought to myself, well, it's not really, it doesn't really earmark her, but so I called her up and I said, you know what, I'm going to write the song I'm going to write you. And I put my foot right in my mouth. The song I'm going to write you, you're going to know it's about you. You're going to know you're in it. It's, I'm still trying to impress, right? Anyway, I sat down and the first line I came up with, are you a jewel or a precious gem? You got your nickname from your famous friend. Are you a diamond or a precious gem? And I started, putting ruby, emerald, aquamarine, all those kind of flavors. And then when I got to the hook, it was, I'm bleeding blue over you, So, and then in the song, it's like, you got your nickname from your famous friend. And then, and in the bridge on the turnaround, it goes, take a little peek, Julie, have a little peek. So, I thought it was a really good attempt at writing a song for somebody.
Yeah.
and it came out really well. And I got to be honest, it's also an homage to Leon Russell, because I was going through the Leon Russell songbook while I was writing Jewel, and there was a song, um, and it had these amazing different kinds of chords that Leon would come up with. Leon was he was in the Wrecking Crew. I don't know if a lot
Yeah.
of people knew that,
Yeah.
but
Right.
he was the piano player on Stranger in the Night for Sinatra. He was a really well-crafted piano player. And I came across these chords and I went, oh, that's a great chord. And this is a great chord. I'm going to stick them in the bridge. So I borrowed those two chords and they happened to work on this bridge. And so the song Jewel is an homage to Leon.
Nice.
Um,
Cool. Has Julie responded to has
oh
she?
yeah, she loved it.
Oh, cool.
Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, it's a great song. So
And
yeah,
she comes to the shows now, when I'm
nice.
playing, and I I look at her and I tell the story, but I don't point her out, but I look at her and it's it really worked well in my, I kind of won that round in that,
Yeah. I
in the game of love. I got, I got the point on that one.
yes, definitely.
Other songs, let's see. This Bird Has Flown is an homage to the Beatles, because
Hmm.
there's a
Yeah.
line in a Beatles song called "This Bird Has Flown"
Yeah.
in Norwegian Wood. Dinner for One is all about my love for Cuban Latin music.
Yeah.
There once was a documentary called the Buena Vista Social Club,
Yeah. I think I've seen that.
and it was fantastic. Ry Cooder and
Yeah.
Wim Wenders did it.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. And so I was watching it one night during COVID, and watched the whole documentary. And those artists, those Cuban artists in the 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s, they're in their 70s and 80s. Some of them are even up to like almost not, or I think one of them was 90. And they were the best singers and the best artists in Cuba at the time. And then, of course, Castro came in and shut all the hotels and everything down, and they kind of lost their gigs. But this Buena Vista Social Club is a resurrection of their lives and their gigs, and they bring them all back together to do a concert at Carnegie Hall. And I was listening to the words in one song, and they were so romantic and so powerful and so Latin. It was so this, the way they described, their passion was amazing. So I wrote Dinner for One kind of in that language.
Nice.
I don't want to copy any grooves that are out there, or any kind of any things that people are doing. I just want to write authentically, and I just want to write genuinely, and that's what these songs have in them. That's their DNA. The
Yeah, it
DNA
feels
is
yeah.
the DNA is real.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it feels very honest. It feels like,
yeah.
an honest expression of who you are. And
Yeah, I mean, Dinner for One is all about a guy that plans this elaborate meal in his, in his home, and dresses up and puts on his dancing shoes and puts the song on the Victrola, and and I envision the fans going around and round and round. It's in Havana,
yeah.
and outside the neons blinking from exhaustion, screaming promises of what's inside, but no one watches, and it's and all the people think he's crazy because he does this all the time. He makes this elaborate meal, this feast for a woman that's gone. She's
Yeah.
never coming back, But that's what Dinner for One is. Breathe is, I think, probably my favorite song, if I was to pick one that I wrote that stands out to me. It's therapy. It's not therapy. It's therapy, and
I like that.
and it's and when you can't come up with anything to fix something, sometimes monetary or a gadget or or it just doesn't, well, you're stuck and there's nothing, and you're in a lot of pain or something's happening or it's not working out for you. The best thing you can do is just breathe,
Yeah.
and get through it. So that's what Breathe is about.
Nice.
Walter Trout just cut that song on his album.
Oh, really?
On the new Broken album.
Nice.
That went to #1. Then there's a song on here, A Change Would Do Me Good. And that's the first single that came off this record. And it went to #1 in the Netherlands on Easter Sunday. And really happy about that. And that's my Bo Diddley homage. It's got that.
Yeah, nice bluesy.
Hey, Bo Diddley. I love that beat. And no one's done a Bo Diddley beat in a long time, so I figured I had to do one.
Yeah,
and cool. I threw kind of a Deep Purple organ on it, kind of feel. And, because I love stuff like that.
Yeah, very.
Let's see. True Romance is really about me. A memory I had once of slow dancing with somebody, and feeling very, in love and caught up in the moment of romance, and I wrote that so that somebody could dance with their wives that they've just been married to at their wedding. So it's that kind of a song.
It's a nice sentiment. Yeah.
Your Husband's Got a Gun is tongue in cheek.
Yeah, it's a great song.
That's real tongue in cheek. That's he smelled us when he got home, the air ripe with what we done.
Yeah.
That's why I'm running for my life from your husband with his gun.
Yeah, backdoor man.
Definitely the backdoor man. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Backdoor Santa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Red Harvest. Red Harvest is the bonus track, and that's something that I was fortunate enough to get Paul Rodgers, the great singer from Free and Bad Company, to do a duet with me on. Yeah. And the way that song came about is I was watching CNN the week that Russia invaded the Ukraine and started bombing and missiles and and dropping things on civilians and whatnot. And I looked and saw all the grandmothers and women and the children were boarding trains and buses and cars and bicycles and horses to get to the Polish border to get out of the Ukraine.
Yeah.
And they had to leave their husbands and sons and brothers there because they were conscripted to be in the army. Even though they didn't ever carry a gun, they now had to, fight for their country and for their lives. And I saw it. It was so powerful, so sad, and it was tugging at my heartstrings. And I started writing. Like I said, I write poems and I write stories. And I started writing a poem that I entitled "Red Harvest" because the Ukraine. The country of Ukraine is the breadbasket for that area. They it's agricultural, wheat, soybean, sunflowers, sunflower oil. All that stuff is exported around the world from that country, and they weren't going to have a harvest that year. I mean, because of the war. Yeah. So the only harvest they were going to have is what I described as red harvest. And so I wrote it. I wrote the poem in about, 10 minutes. I sat down at the piano. That was done in less than 10 minutes.
Oh,
And some of my best songs have always been done like that. And what I did was I called the owner of the record company at Quarto Valley Records, Bruce Quarto, and I said, "Hey, I want to record this, and I think we should do something right away." And he was nice enough to go, "Yeah, okay, I'll give you the budget. Go in the studio and cut this thing." And I said, "And I think what we need to do is we need to, put it out on YouTube or wherever, and just as a charitable thing, so that there's a link at the end of the song for the Ukrainian Red Cross and for the World Kitchen,
nice.
who are feeding everybody when they get to the Polish border."
Yeah.
So I call Tony Bronicle, Lawrence Juber. I get Leland Sklar from the immediate family, and Leland's played with everybody in the world.
Yeah, great player.
Great bass player. And we all go into Lawrence's house and start to cut it. And then I call up, because I used to play with Stephen Stills and his band. And then he dragged me into Crosby, Stills and Nash, and I played on, some of their recordings, Southern Cross, for example.
Yeah.
And I became friendly with Crosby, David Crosby. And so I call David Crosby, and I said, "I want you to sing on this record." And he said, "All right, send it to me. Let me see if I feel it." So I sent it to him, and I didn't hear anything for a day. And I called him back. I said, "We got to get this thing out there." He says, "Well, I can't even listen to this till the weekend." It was kind of midweek, and we had cut the track. And so I went home, and I'm thinking, "Oh God, we're gonna wait for Crosby to, And I thought Crosby's voice would be great. And my phone rang just as I was thinking that. And on the phone was a Brit. And the guy goes, "Hey, this is Paul, and I want to sing on your song." And I said, "Well, stop taking the piss out of me," because I thought the Paul that just called was my lawyer, music lawyer, who's Paul Quinn, who's a Brit, who sounded exactly like that. And I'd spoken to him in the morning. And I said, "Paul, you're a lawyer. You're not a fucking singer. So stop taking the piss out of me and fuck off." Right. And he goes, No, this is Paul Rogers. I want to sing on this thing.
Oh my
Bruce Quarto sent me this track.
Oh, wow.
I was like, "Really?" Paul Rogers from Bad Company and Free. He goes, Yeah. Said, "We met. We tried to get you drunk once in music on a TV show."
Nice.
I went, "Yeah, okay, I remember you. Yeah, okay."
That's just
So he said, "Yeah, I want to sing on this. Please send me the tracks and let me contribute." So I didn't realize it, and I didn't know it, but Paul's wife is Ukrainian.
Oh, I didn't know
And,
that either.
yeah, Cynthia Rogers. And so she was really invested in helping, to do this. And sure enough, we sent him the track, and within one day it was done. So that's why Paul Rogers is on that and not David Crosby, because he stepped up like within 24 hours. It was done.
That's cool. And what a great vocalist. Yeah, one of my all-time favorites. Yeah, I'm a huge Free fan. Yeah, that's
absolutely.
Really cool. I love the fact that I think it's so cool that you write short stories and poems, and that's what becomes these songs. Do you publish any of your short stories? Do you publish any?
No, I'm starting to write a book of short stories.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And my life through music, throughout the music industry and whatnot.
Very cool.
I'll give you a backstory of one thing on here. Walter Mitty's Glasses.
Oh, great song. Great story.
The backstory. Okay, here's the story. I'm writing a short story called Walter Mitty's Glasses, just a short story. And for all you cats and kittens out there that don't know who Walter Mitty is, Walter Mitty was a movie that Danny Kaye made in the 60s. It was all about this kind of nebbishy, kind of nerdy guy that was like an accountant in a insurance company, and he would sit at his desk all day long and crunch numbers, and then he would daydream, and you'd follow his daydream, and his daydream would be he becomes the fireman that rescues the cat out of the tree. He becomes, the guy that, foils the bank robber.
Yeah.
He
The heroic
becomes the hero.
pilot. Yeah.
Right. Right. He lands a plane with the engines are out or something, And then it was remade about 10 years ago with Sean Penn and Kristen Wiig and who is that? I can't remember the comic. Ben Stiller. Ben Stiller.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, he's in it. And so I was thinking about Walter Mitty because I had just seen the remake, and I decided to write this thing called Walter Mitty's Glasses. And it goes like this. A guy walks into an antique store, and in the antique, store, there's all these tables and things and kiosks set up that people come in and put their shit on consignment, right? And this one area has got nothing but glasses and sunglasses and magnifying glasses and all this crap. And a guy walks over there, and he picks up a pair of glasses, and he goes and puts them on, and he looks in the mirror and he goes, not me. And he goes and picks up another pair of glasses, and he goes, not quite. And he goes and picks up a third pair of glasses, puts them on, and he looks in the mirror, and someone else is looking back at him. It's not him. It's this handsome, tanned, hair is perfect looking guy. The hair is just absolutely perfect. And he's like, says to the owner, he said, where do you get these glasses? And the owner says, oh, a guy comes in with a box, and we buy like 15 or 20 pairs every month. He said, but whose glasses are these? He says, I don't know. They're in the box. They're for sale. So he looks at the glasses, and he's reading in, this part of the arm of the glass, and it says, property of Walter Mitty. And he puts them back on, and there's this, handsome dude looking at him. So he wears them to a party that night, and he looks, and he sees the hottest girl in the room, and he thinks to himself, she's going home with me tonight because I look like this, and that's the bones of the story.
Nice. That's great. I love that you've taken that old story and transformed it into something new. And
yeah, and I was listening to 10cc that day.
Oh,
and
love that band.
Yeah, and listening to that reggae song that they put out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like they were in vacationing or something in Jamaica.
Yeah.
And so I said to Lawrence, I said, let's throw some reggae on this,
Very cool. Very cool. You got to tell me about so my favorite song, I think, it's one of those albums where, yeah, like a song comes on, and then like, oh, this is my favorite song. And then the next song comes on, I'm like, nope, this is my favorite song. But the one that kind of, and I love like every track on there, but the one that kind of speaks to me maybe a little more so than others, like, and we're talking like little minute, but They Can Kill You. I love the horns. I love the horns in that song. And the backup singers. I just love the vibe of that song, and just, yeah, it makes me want to dance. It's just, yeah, I love that song. Yeah. So you got to tell me a little bit about that song.
Okay. So They Can Kill You was made when I was making Fresh Bear tracks.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
It was a track that never made that album.
Okay.
So was This Bird Has Flown. Those are the two things that never made Fresh Bear tracks.
Interesting.
So it was because I had an abundance of songs. I had too many songs for that record. And so this record, I went like, oh, we got to use some of those because, if they fit in the flow, and they actually do. So let's see. They Can Kill You. I was watching this goofy thing during COVID or something, all about roadies. This series about roadies or something that was on TV, it was kind of this kind of comedic kind of thing, and you were following roadies and this and that, and and this girl breaks up with this guy. They stop the tour bus in front of her house, and the roadie tour bus, and he's expecting her to come down, and go to the next gig with him. He's got a girl in every port, and he looks up at her, and he kind of sees her in the window, and there's a dude with her with his arm around her, right? And she yells down to him, "I won't be coming with you to Memphis. You can see why." And then he turns to his friend, the bus driver, whoever that is, where they stopped, and he says, "These girls, these women, they can kill you in so many ways. there's so many ways they kill you." So I thought to myself, that's a great line. I think I'm going to use it. So that's what that's about. And the horns and the girls on that are fabulous. And it's the E Street horns.
Okay.
It's
I
La
was wondering.
Bamba.
Yeah.
It's La Bamba, and it's Mark Pender from E Street. It's Joe Sublette, who plays sax on that. He was Stevie Ray Vaughan's bandmate. They were in the Cobras together. They grew up in Austin together.
Nice.
And he is a phenomenal, sax player, unbelievable. And so I put the horns on. They can kill you, and it's kind of it's tongue in cheek. It's for 5 minutes of pleasure. Samson lost his power.
Yeah, that song just swings. I love it. It's great. Yeah, and I mean the whole album.
And it swings. It really swings.
It does really swing.
It's really it's a really good track.
Yeah, when that song came on. I mean the whole thing. I think my dad would love, but that song particularly, I'm like, I got to play this for my dad. He's gonna love this. So next time he comes over, I'm like, I got a song for you, Dad. Check this out, because he's a big band jazz guy, so he's gonna love the horns on that song.
Oh, nice.
And he used to play trumpet too, so yeah, he'll totally dig that. Very cool, very cool. If you don't mind, I'd like to switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
And take a ride in the Wayback Machine.
Okay.
And one, I was curious about, kind of your, like, how this all started for you. And I also know a little. I've read a little bit about you, and an old story about kind of your first, or kind of, for lack of a better term, how you were discovered, and you were very young at the time. And I'm really curious about that. But I'd love to hear from your mouth, because I read like a journalist story about that once years ago. But I'd love to hear it coming from you. But then also, I was curious about, did you come from a musical family? Like, how did this all start for you? Where did this come from?
No, I came from a family that made brassieres.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. And I thought, I can't do this. I cannot. I'm not going to be a. I'm not going in the schmata garment business. I'm not going to be a garmento. And I loved music. I loved playing it. I would go out and buy records, ride my bike into the town, go to the record store, and I was the only kid that would buy like Muddy Waters records, and shit like that,
Nice.
and lots of Procol Harum.
Oh,
all their records.
I love that band.
The Zombies,
Oh,
the Kinks,
yeah.
the Who. I was like, I got a great, vinyl collection. And I remember being kind of putting my first band together at 11 or 12 years old, and playing, in the garage band. And then, we all got really cool suits, and playing at bar mitzvahs and things like that. And I was born in New York City, but raised in the Caribbean, and that's why I have the flavors of Caribbean music in my soul, my DNA.
Yeah.
Calypso, mento, Latin, salsa, all that kind of stuff. And I remember being like, kind of, let's see, well, who kind of really set the tone for me? Okay, I got a job later in life, at my late I stopped going to school. I just couldn't take it anymore. And it was, it was like, that's it. And so they sent me away to a military school because I was kind of this runaway kind of guy.
Wow.
And I couldn't handle that at all, and I kind of went AWOL a few times. And then went back to New York. That was in Miami. Then went back to New York. And so they said, okay, do what you want to do, but we don't want to have to bail you out anymore. So I got a job at a music store. I got a job at a place called Manny's Music on West 48th Street.
Cool.
And it was the music store in New York City. And all the bands that came through New York that were playing the Fillmore East or Madison Square Garden or the Palladium, they all stopped there. The roadies and everybody, the musicians all stopped there to get their gear. And it was positioned kind of center west side of town around a lot of recording studios. So a lot of the recording studios would get their gear there as well. And I was down there and I got a job, and my job was basically to show people keyboards because I could play keyboards. And back in the day they had like Vox Continental organs and Farfisa organs and Rhodes and Wurlitzers and things like that. And bands would come through, roadies would come through, and they'd give out passes to the shows that their bands were playing at. And one night, a guy came in and he said, here's a pass. Come down tonight. I'm with a band called the Iron Butterfly. So they had a big keyboard thing on there called Inagata Divita with this like 2-hour organ solo.
Yeah.
And so I went down to hear the 2-hour organ solo, and there was an opening act, and I got great seats, and I'm sitting there, and the opening act comes on, and the announcer goes, please welcome for their second appearance in the United States from Great Britain, Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin was opening for Iron Butterfly.
Nice.
And I saw the set, and they played their first album beginning to end. And it was the best rock and roll I'd ever heard. It was the best band I'd ever seen. And it was the best show I've ever been to this day. And, when they were finished, I left. I didn't need to hear Iron Butterfly. And I went, oh man, rock and roll is it, And I went back to work at Manny's, and the following week or the week after, Rody comes in and says, hey, I'm with the Grateful Dead, and we're going to have a jam tonight. And why don't you come down and check it out? We're trying to fill the house, so we're giving out free passes and things. It's not been announced. It's not on the schedule. We're just going to have a jam. So I went down there, and he saw me, and he gave me a backstage pass.
Nice.
And he also saw me playing some keyboards. And during the evening, he looks at me, and Jerry Garcia points at me, and I'm standing on the side of the stage, and he brings me out, sits me down at the Wurlitzer, and I'm playing with the Dead. I'm playing with the Dead and Traffic. And who else was playing that night with them? Some of the guys from Jefferson Airplane.
Nice.
Yeah. And I was like, wow. And I was there, and I was like, I'm a teenager, I'm like, I don't know, 17, 18, maybe at best. And I want to do this the rest of my life.
Wow.
So that's what kicked it in. And then I would go to all the open mic nights from the Village all the way uptown, to listen to all the really good folkies, the really good folk players, that wrote really good songs, I thought, and a lady named Odetta. I would listen to her sing, and she was this big black woman who sang great. And I said, teach me how to sing. And she says, all right, teach me how to play piano. And I was playing one night, and Richie Havens walked in, and he went, oh, I love the way you play. would you come and play with me and my band in Central Park at the concert, at the Schaefer Festival? And I played with them at the Central Park. And then he said, would you play on my record?
Wow.
And I played with him on his record. I was the only vanilla fella. I was the only white guy, in the room, but I played on it. And I met the guy that engineered and produced it was Al Schmidt, who is one of the most legendary music producers in the world. I didn't know it at the time, but he did all the Sinatra records. He did all, he was the, engineer and producer at Capitol Records in LA.
Wow.
So I got to meet a lot of people through a lot of these people. I was just in the right place, the right time. I played the right notes. I, and then I got a record deal, on RCA Records.
That's fine. And 78, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I had a number
Red Hot and Blue.
Red Hot and Blue. But the single was Sunshine Hotel. And that went to number 4 in the world dance charts. So around the world, and especially Germany, I was like number 1 in Germany, and at the time, and it was like amazing.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Had you?
That's so kind of how I started off.
That's amazing. Yeah, like you said. I mean, right place, right time, but also you have a lot of talent. So I mean, there's that too. But I mean, yeah, it's insane how, you hear these stories, and yeah, like a lot of times it's kind of luck, where just you happen to be where you're supposed to be at the right time, and bang, things happen. It's amazing.
And if you have if you can lay down the goods, and you're able to provide the answer to the sonic question to make this track better, or you're following, and I learned a lot as a young studio musician, watching how people handle themselves and behave, and when to talk, when not to talk, to learn to be humble, but yet, get your point across. I worked at a jingle house for a while.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Jingles, the jingles are commercials.
Yeah.
And I worked at Jingle House writing jingles every day. I tried everything. I tried everything to move this career along. And fortunately, when I got my record deal, I wasn't on the best label at the time. RCA sucked. It was a terrible place to be. They had just brought in a new president at the record company from the refrigerator division in Mexico.
Oh God.
Who never had been in a recording studio in his life. He'd never, I don't think he ever listened to music. I mean, I couldn't believe, let me put it to you this way. I walked into the A&R Nashville RCA because I was playing down there, and sitting there was Chet Atkins and Perry Como having martinis, and I wanted to go to RCA Nashville because they made so many great country albums, and that's the division that was carrying everybody else. And I wanted to meet Chet Atkins because he was the head of A&R there, but he was like the most amazing guitar player you ever heard, And so I'm sitting there, and they're getting drunk, and I'm introduced. Oh, this is a new artist we just signed in New York, and he's down here playing at Vanderbilt. And he says, "They signed you in New York?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "You're fucked." And then Chet Atkins goes, "My condolences,"
Oh, no.
And it was true, because I went to dinner with this new president of the company who's had all these ideas of how he's going to run this company. And he says, "We've got a #1 record on RCA Nashville right now. And what's it called?" And the A&R guy goes, "It's called Waylon and Willie." He says, "Well, I want to meet this guy, Waylon Willie."
Oh no.
And I knew I'm fucked.
Oh no. Wow.
But outside the U.S., I was doing great. Inside the U.S., not so much. And I made five, I think 4 or 5 records, uh, 3 records for RCA, a live one, two studio ones, and then later on, I went over to Europe and started making records there,
Oh,
for
okay.
Telefunken, and I made 5 solo albums there. They all did well, and I got lucky that way.
Well, and then you became not then, but I mean, I'm assuming I shouldn't make assumptions here, but it was around that same time that you're right around 78, your first album, you became a pretty hot commodity in terms of session work. And maybe a little bit before that. I mean, I
Yeah,
know
I
you
played.
played
I
on
played on a.
this.
Yeah, I played on a lot of sessions, and some of the sessions that come to mind are the ones of the T-shirt you're wearing today. You got your Kiss shirt on,
Yeah.
and by coincidence, 2 days ago, I ran into Paul Stanley
Oh,
up
nice.
at Beverly Glen Market, and we sat down at Starbucks outside on the cafe we talked for a good hour
Cool.
and reminisced about all the records that I was involved in, and all the people that were that kind of were at Coin Management that managed those guys. Um, we talked about Sean Delaney, who was really a very special person in the life of Kiss, who put together the Kabuki makeup with Gene, and he also designed their stage show. And he amazing guy. And introduced me to the band members, and I started to ghostwrite with them and help them along. And I did a Peter Criss album,
Yeah.
did a Gene Simmons album. Um, in fact, I met Cher through Gene Simmons
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and
because
did some
I played with
albums,
her.
for her. So it was one thing led to another. But the Kiss stuff, I go back. I'm even in the documentary Kisstory.
Oh,
You see
cool.
my picture.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from those guys. I really did, and I learned a lot about management. And Billy Squier
Mm.
was in a band called Piper at the time that was managed by Bill Aucoin, and the Kiss management people. And to me, Kiss was the epitome of cartoon characters that came to life
Yeah.
and put on guitars and just knocked it out of the park. I mean, Budokan, Kobo Hall. I mean, you go through their lineage, and it's unbelievable
Yeah.
what they pulled off.
Right.
And I learned that you know what, you can do this. You can do this. Follow the formula. Follow the formula.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, I was gonna mention, yeah, you played on Billy Squier's first solo album, and yeah, Cher and the Blues Brothers, and I mean, yeah, the list goes on. You played with
Yeah,
so many luminaries of the musical world, and influenced the way that they play. I mean, I think that's one of the I mean, and I love the Peter Criss, solo Kiss album. But I think one of the strengths of that album really is the keyboard work, like the piano work on that album is, um, obviously you, and I think that's a big strength of that album is just those keyboard
that's
melodies.
what I'm told that by a lot of people, and I'm very humbled by that. Um, I had I have this sense when I don't think about what I'm playing in the first take or two that the best stuff comes out when I don't really try to think it through,
Hmm.
when I can just feel it through, and I just go on to kind of an automatic pilot. I have a picture I just found I want to show you.
Okay. Oh, cool. Wow. I love he's hiding his face too. That's got to be what, 78, 79?
Yeah, yeah, that was in London
Nice.
when he was dating Cher.
Oh, that's so cool. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you happen to run into Mr. Paul Stanley again, feel free to
Oh,
drop my name.
I will, because
Feel free to drop my name.
I will. I'm playing a gig here in LA to support the new album at a place called the Mint. I love this dive bar.
Oh,
It's
cool.
great, and it's a great place. I think they've been around about 40 or 50 years, and
Nice.
they've redone it. And it's really good music venue. It's small, holds about 200 people. It's really perfect for what you want to do, and it can be intimate or it can be just jumping. And it's called the Mint. I'm going to be there. Let's see, June 22nd, which is a Saturday night. I'm going to play one show, I think about 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night. And then the rest of the year, I'm out with Walter Trout playing with him and his band.
Oh, cool.
And I'm also opening for Mike Zito a few dates. And I'm going to also do a few just piano, vocal, just me and the piano.
Oh, nice.
And it's kind of as kind of a master class on songwriting and session playing. I'm going to go out and do those. Yeah, and the thing is, even to this day, a producer like um, Jack Douglas, Jack Douglas, he did Cheap Trick,
Okay. Yeah.
Aerosmith,
Yeah.
John Lennon, Lou Reed, great, great producer, made some of the best records that we hear. He'll say to me, I want you to come and play on this record. I'll be in LA, and I go down there and play with him. And I say, well, how do you want me to play on this? And he'll say, well, you're the only guy I know now that plays like Nicky Hopkins. So
Hmm.
play like Nicky Hopkins, but put a little T-Bear on top of it, and that's what I do,
Very cool.
yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And yeah, I'm glad you brought up the shows because I was going to ask you if you had some upcoming shows. So yeah, very cool. Very cool. Well, T-Bear, this has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today and really truly an honor. So for those of you watching, if you'll look in the description below, there are links to T-Bear's pages. You'll definitely want to go pick up the new album, the Way of the World from Porto Valley Records. Phenomenal record, especially if you dig just killer tune, just killer R&B stuff, and just good rock and roll. You will dig this album. I cannot stop listening to it. I love it. It's absolutely fun.
Thank you so much. And what I've been doing, one other thing I will add is one of the other things I do is every Tuesday from 1 o'clock to 1:30, I have a live on Facebook, T-Bear live on Facebook.
Oh, great.
And I will sing 2 or 3 songs and talk about events that happened on this day in history and all kinds of shit that you want to bring up from around the world. Because I got people from around the world that type things in and have questions. So if you want to be a part of that, please do.
Nice.
And I also have on YouTube something called the Bear Facts.
Hmm.
And that's with artists that I've worked with my whole life that are guests on the show. And so you can, chime in on those 2 things.
Nice. Excellent.
Bear
Yeah.
Facts are on YouTube, and Live at the Bear Cave with T-Bear or T-Bear is on Facebook.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. Check the links below. You can, yeah, definitely check that out. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you again, T-Bear. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Victor. It's been an honor to be on your show. And keep on doing what you do,
Thank you.
And remember, kids, if you can't help them, don't hurt them.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Peace.